Chapter 34 The Delighted Geese. A flock of geese had just landed at Hilltop Farm. It was the first flock of the autumn migration. The geese floated on the pond, cleaning their feathers and nibbling on weeds. But they all stopped what they were doing when Roz waved and said hello. The robot never forgot a face, and she was certain she didn't know any of these geese. But they seemed to know her. Before she even introduced herself, the lead goose squawked, "Is your name Roz?" The robot stared at the goose. "Yes, it is." "And can you speak the animal language?" The answer was obvious, but Roz politely said, "Yes, I can speak the animal language." "Do you, by any chance, have a goose for a son?" "Yes, I do," said Roz. "His name is Brightbill." At that, a voice blurted out, "The stories are true!" And suddenly the flock was smiling and fluttering over to the robot. When the commotion was settled down, the leader explained, "All along our migration, we've heard rumors of a robot who can speak with animals, who has a goose for a son, and who was trapped on a farm. That sounded ridiculous to us, but here you are." The flock was absolutely delighted to meet our robot. They lounged around on the pond for a couple of days, chatting with Roz whenever she came by, and then they continued flying south to their wintering grounds. Another flock of geese arrived, and the same thing happened all over again. Roz welcomed them. They were delighted to meet the legendary robot, and then the flock continued south. Then it happened again and again. Before long, the coming and going of delighted geese was just another part of the robot's autumn routine. Straggling behind the others as usual was Wingtip's flock. When Roz saw them splashing onto the pond, she felt something like hope that they might have news of her son. Sadly, the geese had no news to report. And as the flock took off and left Roz behind, she began to question whether she'd ever see Brightbill again. Chapter 35 is titled The Memories, and it's on page 97. Roz still dreamed of escaping, of going home, of reuniting with her son, but her hopes were starting to feel impossible. She was losing hope. Was it time for the robot to accept her new life and forget her old one? Forget. Roz was troubled by that word. You see, her computer brain remembered every detail of her life on the island, and it hurt to think she might never make it back there. However, the robot could always forget. She could erase her old memories. It would be like they never happened. The heaviness she now felt would vanish. But without her memories, who would she be? No, Roz wanted to remember her old life, which was good, because someone from her old life was about to appear. Ooh, here's some foreshadowing about what's going to happen next. Remember, foreshadowing is when you're giving some clues. Chapter 36, The Unusual Flock. Another flock of geese was approaching the farm, but this flock was unusual. It wasn't flying south like the others. It was flying north in a perfect V formation, and it was led by a young, graceful goose. The flock flew once around the farm buildings and then delicately touched down in the barnyard. The leader whispered some words to the others, and then he fluttered in through the barn door. The cows looked up from their stalls as the goose perched himself on a railing near the middle of the barn. Then the goose cleared his throat, shook his tail feathers, and announced to the herd, "I am looking for a robot named Roz. My name is Brightbill. I am her son." And here's the illustration of them flying in the V formation. Chapter 37, The Reunion. Something was wrong with the cows. Their excited moos echoed out from the barn and across the farm. Roz sent the milk truck away for its evening deliveries and hurried off to see what the ruckus was about. When she stepped into the barn, she found the entire herd crowded together. As the robot started pushing her way through, the cows turned to her and smiled. And then Roz saw him, her beloved son, Brightbill. As you know, reader, robots don't feel emotions, not the way animals do. But in that moment, in that barn, nobody had any doubt about how Roz felt. She rushed forward and scooped her son into her arms. "Brightbill," she cried, "is it really you?" Here's the illustration of them having their reunion. "It's really me," Brightbill nuzzled his mother's face. "But how did you find me?" said Roz. "Ma, you're famous. You were all anyone could talk about at the wintering grounds. It started with the flocks of geese that stopped here on their migrations. They shared your story with everyone they met. Your story spread from flock to flock, from north to south, from east to west. Eventually, your story made its way to me. I took off as soon as I heard you where you were. I didn't even tell the others. But we caught up with them. Loudwing, the old goose, fluttered over the herd and gently landed on a cow's back. Brightbill wasn't the only one who wanted to see you, Roz. The rest of the flock appeared, and the robot found herself surrounded by old friends and family. Squawking and mooing and laughing and cheering filled the barn. But then came a loud, clear voice that only the robot understood. Roz, what are you doing? The animals hushed. Roz slowly turned around, and there were Jaya and Jad standing in the doorway. The children had seen everything. Chapter 38 will be titled The Truth.